the King laying his wreath at the Cenotaph, stepping back, walking backwards, of course, saluting the Cenotaph and remembering those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom.
And now the Prince of Wales will lay his wreath after the wreath has been laid on behalf of the Queen by her representative.
The Queen, of course, not here as she is unwell, not at the Cenotaph, but we'll have Prince William next, Daniel, I believe, who is going to...
That's right. Major Ollie Blunkett laid the Queen's wreath, and now the Prince of Wales. And he will be followed by the Duke of Edinburgh.
Prince Edward is now, of course, the Duke of Edinburgh. He's inherited his father's title, and he served, of course, in the military. He is saluting there as well. And there are so many people watching closely, senior members of the government, former prime ministers as well, many members of the military too. Princess Anne now coming up. She, of course, is one of the hardest working royals, perhaps the hardest working royal, who, of course, saw military service herself, Daniel.
Absolutely right. And she's wearing, of course, a naval uniform. And she will be followed by Lieutenant Peter Myborough, who is laying the wreath on behalf of the Duke of Kent. Duke of Kent into his late 80s now, but formerly, and for many years, the Colonel of the Scots Guards, and he was a professional army man.
So that wreath on behalf of the Duke of Kent now being laid there. And the royal family, of course, have a huge connection to the armed services, so many of them serving our country across the generations, really, as well, and the Duke of Kent being represented there. As you say, Daniel, there are...
Now it's the turn of, first of all, the Prime Minister on behalf of the country.
So this is Sir Keir Starmer, who has, of course, been the Prime Minister since July. This is the first time, as he has, of course, led wreaths as Leader of the Opposition previously, and he is doing it as Prime Minister for the first time. What is the music that's being played here, Daniel?
I knew you'd ask me that, Peter. I can't hear a single thing from Whitehall.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry too. That hasn't got through to you, but certainly there is. I'm afraid I don't know the name of the piece of music, but it is a mournful piece of music, of course, appropriate to the occasion. And the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, laying his wreath at the Cenotaph. He'll be followed by the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch. She's doing so for the first time. There are many wreaths. How many wreaths are in total, do we think, are being laid today? Because we know there are many parts of the country and our nation that are to be remembered and to be signified and to pay their respects at this time, Daniel.
That's absolutely right. Here's Kemi Badenoch laying her wreath on behalf of the opposition, and as you say, Peter, her first time. There are going to be thousands of wreaths today, Peter. We're seeing what you might call the upper echelons laying their relief at the moment, but they will shortly be followed by thousands of veterans who will be laying wreaths, and the Cenotaph at the end of this morning will be completely covered in them. I've been at this ceremony in Whitehall. Sir Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats, now the third party in the House of Commons, will lay his wreath on behalf of the Lib Dems. And it is always very moving to see, at the end of the ceremony, to see all these wreaths piled up, and the fact that these memories of former comrades are carried down through the generations. So many of people's comrades want to lay wreaths in commemoration of those that they served with. Stephen Flynn, the parliamentary leader of the SNP, will lay his wreath on behalf of the SNP and Plaid Cymru. The two parties take it in alternate years to lay the wreath at the Cenotaph.
Yes, and it's Gavin Robinson who is next. He is the leader of the Democratic Unionists. He is the MP for East Belfast, and he is going to be laying the wreath now. He's walking up to the Cenotaph in order to do that. He has taken over the leadership from Sir Geoffrey Donaldson in the last few months, and is of course representing his party and many people in Northern Ireland who support that party as well. It's the biggest party in Northern Ireland in parliamentary terms anyway, in terms of Westminster, so that is what he has been doing there. And next, as he goes back to the formation, it's Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons. And very important here, Daniel, that all parliamentarians are represented by Sir Lindsay.
That's right. It's very much an occasion for all parliamentarians to come together. And you mentioned Gavin Robinson, Peter. I think this must be his first occasion at the Cenotaph, laying a wreath for the DUP.
It is indeed, actually, yes. He is he's been Lord Mayor of Belfast previously, and at the Belfast ceremony, of course, which I have attended myself, he has been laying the he has led the wreath there in previous years, and of course in other parts of Belfast as well. John McFall now, he is the Lord's Speaker and is laying
Lord
the wreath.
McFall of Accleath.
Ah, right, okay, and he is laying the wreath on behalf of the peers of the realm, Daniel.
Peers of the realm who may be going to see some changes in their makeup in the coming year if the government's proposals to abolish the last of the hereditary peers in the House of Lords, the somewhat ironically elected members of the House of Lords, the only elected members of the House of Lords, the remaining 92 hereditary peers. And now David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, together with the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, and they lay their wreaths on behalf of the security services, MI5, MI6, GCHQ.
So they're doing this together, the Home and Foreign Secretaries.
That's
there,
right.
David Lammy
That's
and
right.
Yvette Cooper, yeah. And of course there are all various members of the Cabinet, really all members of Cabinet appear to be there anyway. I can see all of the Transport Secretary there, I can see the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner as well, Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, but Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary, but they don't lay wreaths themselves. There are of course these other more senior members of the government laying them on their behalf.
That's right. That's right, Peter. And actually we now get the wreaths from the Crown dependencies. That's the Isle of Man, Jersey, Guernsey will lay their wreaths, and that's followed by the High Commissioners of the Commonwealth countries. But there will now be a fairly long stream of representatives of the Commonwealth and the Crown dependencies laying their wreaths, and when the Commonwealth countries are finished, we will get the representative from Nepal, because of the strong connection with the Gurkhas, who are on parade in Whitehall this morning, and then on behalf of the Republic of Ireland.
Only in recent years that the Republic of Ireland have laid their wreath. That was a very important move towards reconciliation, really, between the two countries, and it's the ambassador, I think it'll be Martin Fraser, who is the current ambassador from Ireland, who will lay that wreath this year. I know that Adrian O'Neill, his predecessor, has laid it in previous years, Daniel, and that, I think, really shows, as you say, that this is a ceremony that a version of the ceremony has happened for over 100 years, but there are always changes, there are always additions, and we remember in a slightly different way almost every year.
Yes, and as you say, Peter, the laying of wreath by the Republic of Ireland was a very significant change. I think a lot of things are building up to a change, but the Queen's visit to Republic of Ireland, a state visit, in 2011, which went down so well in the Republic and the rest of the United Kingdom, made such a difference to Anglo-Irish relations. If you remember that speech she gave, where she was wearing the complete tiara, all the works, glittery dress, but also with a diamond brooch of the badge of Ireland, the harp.
And thank you to Anne in Teesside, who has very kindly pointed out that it is Funeral March number 1, formerly attributed to Beethoven, believed to be by Johann Henrik Walsh, played annually at the National Service of Remembrance at the Cenotaph in Whitehall, and played during during possession in the British state. So that's Anne in Teesside. Thank you for that. Others asking as well, Daniel, why not every party is represented. Someone asking why Nigel Farage is not there, for example, as leader of Reform. I just wonder, there are, of course, the main parties represented, but with 5 MPs, perhaps Reform not big enough to be at this ceremony. What do you make of this, or what's the reasoning behind this?
We don't see the Greens either, Peter, or indeed a representative of the 5 independents who were elected. And I think the decision was taken a while ago that you had to have 6 MPs to be entitled to lay a wreath at the Cenotaph. That was the ruling made way back in the 80s, I believe, and that's what's operated ever since. Now, those rules can always be changed. It has been changed on occasions to meet certain circumstances, but 6 is the current number, and if those parties, such as the Greens or Reform or any other grouping that may come into existence, get 6 MPs, then that appears to be, at the moment, the point at which you are entitled to lay a wreath at the Cenotaph on Remembrance Day.
Yes, and so many MPs, of course, not at the Cenotaph because they're often in their constituencies, and we're concentrating on the Cenotaph in London because it is the main ceremony, but of course there are so many happening in towns and villages, cities, right across the United Kingdom. This will be echoed and will be copied, or there'll be an echo of what is happening here in so many places across the United Kingdom. So this is the main one. This is the one that the King and the Prime Minister and all these representatives are involved with, but it is so important that not just these big and state occasions happen, Daniel, but actually in even the smallest of villages where perhaps only a handful of people went to war, although of course it affected so many people right across the United Kingdom over so many generations.
And that's the point, Peter, that it affected every part of the country. There are a few places, the blessed villages, as they're called, where no one was killed. But they are very few and far between. There'll be national ceremonies in Edinburgh, Cardiff and Belfast, and then, as you say, in small towns and indeed villages throughout the whole country, all following a very similar arrangement to here. May not have the massed bands of the Royal Marines and the other household parts and the household division of the Guards, but they most certainly will have maybe a local bugler will be able to play something. It will be very similar, and that is what makes it such a unifying ceremony.
I've just been told that apparently Carla Denyer, the leader of the Green Party, and indeed Nigel Farage are on an observational balcony. They are there at the Cenotaph. Yeah. They're at the ceremony today. But as you say, Daniel, not laying wreaths because of those rules going back to the 1980s, but keeping it to, I think you said 6 parliamentarians?
I believe it's 6, Peter. Mm-hmm. Well, it certainly can't be less than 6 because I think, Reform have 5, don't they?
Yes, that's right.
And Greens have 5.
Yes. So if you have 6 MPs or above, you lay a wreath, is that correct?
I believe that's the case.
Okay.
That seems to be the case. Now, having said that, the Plaid Cymru do not have 6, but they and the SNP are entitled to lay wreaths. The SNP, of course, above 6. And they take it in turns to lay the wreath here at Whitehall.
If you're just watching, you'll have seen Martin Fraser there and the Nepalese representative. Martin Fraser is the Irish ambassador to the United Kingdom, laying their wreaths there. We've talked about the importance of that, and there are these. Tell us about who is laying them now. There are military figures there. Can you identify their uniforms there, Daniel?
Absolutely, the Chief of the General Staff and then the Chief of the General Staff for the Army and their equivalents in the RAF and the Navy. And the Chief of the Defence Staff, Sir Tony Radican, his birthday today. He's 59 today.
Daniel, thank you. You're a mine of information, and you have ably, as always, guided us through this very important ceremony for our nation that we observe and mark every year. That's Daniel Britton there, who is a parliamentary and constitutional historian. Thank you to him. We have been watching, observing the national service of remembrance taking place, not just, of course, the national service in London, but right across the country. In fact, there have been a load of people who've been in touch about what's happening in their town and village, including Jason, who's in the Lake District, and says, we had around 500 people outside our front door paying their respect. It never fails to make me feel so indebted to those who gave their lives so that we could have tomorrow. It is very humbling, says Jason. Well, thank you. We're going to leave this ceremony now and go to a break, and in a moment we're going to talk about other issues, political issues, things that are happening in the country. But of course we will never forget the sacrifice that has been made for our freedom, and indeed the freedom to disagree, the freedom to have free speech, which we hold so incredibly close here at Talk. Stay with us. Gareth says, I just feel sad and guilty on Remembrance Day. I served on HMS Brilliant and lost friends during the Armilla Patrol in 1989 and then served in the first Gulf War. Things happened, however, not like what others have been through. My mind shouldn't feel the way it does, lest we forget. Gareth, thank you for that message. Thank you for your service to our country. We remember you today, as well as those, as your comrades you're talking about there, who gave their life. And you're living with this. It's in your mind, and I don't know what battles you've had with your mental health or whatever, but listen, thank you for that message, and we wish you well, not just today actually, but right across the year as well. Let's hear a little bit more from the ceremony. The national anthem there, and the King saluting the Cenotaph once more as the Remembrance Service, the National Remembrance Service at the Cenotaph occurs in central London. Whitehall, if you've never been there, it's just near Parliament. So where Big Ben is, the clock is actually called the Elizabeth Tower, but you know what I'm talking about. Parliament is just down the road. It is walking distance, less than 5 minutes probably, just outside Downing Street itself, the Cenotaph, bang in the centre of Whitehall, where lots of the government departments are. Number 10 Downing Street, the Foreign Office, the Home Office is nearby as well. Ministry of Defence is on Whitehall, and there are that comes to a standstill, of course, as it should, in the centre of London every year. And thank you to Penny in Essex, who says you have so much empathy and feeling. How do you stay so composed? I've been crying my eyes out. It is such an emotional day, says Penny in Essex. Penny, thanks for that comment. Certainly, we're all remembering today and thinking about the sacrifices that have been made.